What's his name? Huh? William Gates. There we go, Bill Gates. That the movie looked like Bill Gates, and it reminded me a lot of that movie about the stock market with Milliken and Borsky in it. Right before they busted him, they put Wall Street out. Now here come this stuff, and here go Gates, a Gates-looking guy. In fact, he comes up with a system to secure people against electronic attack. What was electronic attack? Was that airports had to close because someone used their computer to jack up the system. Pretty soon you're going to hear airports, possibly San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Chicago. If we don't be careful, this will happen. And of course, it did already happen. It did already happen. It already did happen. That all of a sudden those things went out, and you have to study carefully what whites call natural disaster, because the white man don't plan on nothing to go wrong with what he's doing. Everything he does is planned, and double planned, and double checked with an opposite plan. He gonna have, talking about his second generator went out and the San Francisco airport closed down. Bullshit. It ain't never went out in the history of the airport. It just went out 3 weeks after the movie. Like the Ebola, come right out after outbreak. Turnaround time on movies and reality is instantly. Because we're that stupid. Because we're that stupid, they can run it that fast. So they used the system, the computer system was gatekeeper. And gatekeeper was disguised as to protect your computer from a virus, but actually it was the evil. It was the virus. And then I thought about it again, and it sounded like Gates Keeper. Bill Gates, yeah. You watch the antitrust case against Bill Gates, and watch this Disney Capital City Alliance and these amalgamations between Turner and Time and Microsoft. I will get to that in a little bit, but there's some deep shit going on with these corporate amalgamations. All right. We go to New Haven, we go to Boulay Convention. Right as you're coming up the stairs, they got this little poster saying Boulay Convention upstairs. The Boulay logo is there, and finally we see for the first time that it's sigma 9 empty squares pi 9 empty squares phi. Looks like tic-tac-toe with a square around it. You know, doom. You got that in your mind? Put a box on it. 9 squares sitting there. I come here to the good life. On the tape, Boulay Convention revealed. I don't have any with me tonight, but I have them on Friday. I mentioned to the audience that they had these 9 squares there. This was a big breakthrough. And a sister sitting right at the table back there at the counter says, I got something on that. I'll bring it to the lecture tomorrow. I think I can tell you what those 9 squares are. Now, I don't know all of the information that I find, but it's my obligation, once I find it, to cast it out to the universe, demand its translation, and the answers are within you. Everything we've ever done has been a result of our working together. And so, and everywhere I go, I give thanks to that sister. That's not my work, that's her work, and I had the gift to radiate it, to weave it into something, and to make it make more sense. Sister brings back a sheet of paper and says, those are the 9 squares of the Kabbalah. This is an old middle-age secret society symbol, and that it was the 9 squares of Saturn, the 9 chambers of the Kabbalah, and talked about medieval secret societies. And we know the people we're chasing are associated with something called the Round Table Group. Now, I go to New Haven, Connecticut. Brother, let me have one of those tapes. Let me have one of those tapes from Revolution 103. Someone passed it up. If somebody got $20 and wanted, you can buy it after I used it from up here. I ain't got many of them if there's any left. Brother Jamal, I need your tape player. Oh, you got one? Well, I was like, sister, I might get rid of this other one. Somebody can't get to the back later. I need your tape player again for this phone. I'll rewind it in the meantime. Anyway, so we go to New Haven, Connecticut. We remember when we read the Boulay information, it says that it's set up on the tenets of Skull and Bones at Yale. So what's in New Haven, Connecticut but Yale University? It's the center of the town. Everything around it is economically devastated. Just the way they set them institutions up. And right around there is the black community. We're 4 blocks off the campus. And now we're in New Haven, and we're talking about the Boule. Now there's a guy there named Brother George. He's over in the corner. He's got a big long tooth. He got hair pulling all down under this beach hat. He real raggedy. He had toenails, must have been about 4 feet long, coming all over his sandals and stuff. Real raggedy looking brother. The people in New Haven know that George know a lot of things, but they always considered him going off and shit. George was a guy who knew things, but he was strategically irrelevant. And so the people disrespected George. So now here we come, we're reading the list of the Boule names. George is in the back corner with a little bitty booth for political prisoners. And so as I start reading those names and asking the people, who is this? George started working his way down that wall as he answered every single name, knew every single board of directors, every social organization, what their wives did, who their children were, as he ended up right next to me after he started we were working down that list. He ended up right next to me answering every name. And then the people had to stop and give George a standing ovation because all of a sudden they figured out George was a better brother than they had given him credit for. Yeah, it's real deep, real deep. And so I want you to, I'm setting up this tape so you can hear it, but it's also relevant to the discussion about those 9 empty squares. And we'll be lining that up in a second. When I went to Pittsburgh, I walked right up on the Masonic Temple there. They were taking the time capsule out. And interestingly enough, the Masonic Temple in Pittsburgh, anybody from Pittsburgh would know, is on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh, sort of, because they just bought the building that the huge Masonic Temple is in. And it's on 5th Avenue in Tennyson. Tennyson. We had talked in the past about Tennyson and his poetry and other things related to King Arthur. Tennyson is used in the Boule history book, Brother Tony, as a commentary next to Charles Wesley's commentary, who wrote the Boule history book. And Tennyson talks about the fair order of the table round, and Wesley talks about the round table lives. We're finding that the white man and the black man are both talking about the round table. And we know from our study that the round table is the secret society that is the byproduct of Lord Rothschild and Cecil Rhodes of the late 1800s. And that's the only game in town. That's the team of teams. They're being challenged by other whites. But they're still the dominant whites and remain the focus of the core of negativity penetration process. Anyway, so we get to New Haven. Here goes Brother George. We're now in the process of reading the Boule names. And, for those who get the tape, repeat this back into the tape in a way that at least those who get it will know exactly where they are for those who don't know. So as you holler out, I'm saying back into the tape. So I heard someone say, more boards than any black in New Haven. I heard someone else say he was a key man to the mayor, was the mayor's best friend. What else is out here? He headed the Q house. He's on Omega. He's on what? He's on the papers you were showing me. When we looked up, the guy that came out to try to block Brother Collett from speaking in New Haven was the Boule head of the School of Divinity at Yale. As we start mentioning these names and people start talking about what they did, these were all the men who came against our heroes. I got to New Haven. They had a white boy running the Mayotte study group. See, we may have to take a bus up there. Shit. You know why I gave them a 5.5-hour lecture, because when I got there, they needed it. It's George talking. Nothing happened without him knowing about it. Boy, he is for a picture of the ride. In the band with 100 captured by the game, Oh, listen up, listen up. This is a sister in the very back of the room, so you hear her a little less, but we'll repeat what she said. All right. Okay. Now, listen up, listen up. Also, this list goes to 91. I have an update from 92 to 94, so I have to add in. After I read this, don't get to moving. After I read this, I got to go down to the list and show you at the Boule Convention, they came in with an update, a supplement to this, where if you just had this one for 91, you would then get the book that they gave out at the Boule Convention. And we went to the Boule Convention. There came up there probably only one left about what we found when we went there. One of the things we found at the Boule Convention was these 9 empty squares. What's important about the 9 empty squares is that when you look to the Boule logo, and you notice on the Boule logo that you can't tell what that is, you can't tell what that is, you notice that? And I can show you 10 other logos, this is from their book, and you can't distinguish what that is. Well, at the Boule Convention there was a place card saying go upstairs, the convention's upstairs, and what was here, and what was there, was right here. 9 empty squares, sigma, 9 empty squares, pi, 9 empty squares, phi.
The symbol for the city of New Haven is 9 squares.
Oh.
Built on 9 squares.
You hear that? You hear what that was? The symbol for New Haven is 9 squares. New Haven is called the city of the... Oh, Jamal, I got to go back. New Haven is called the city of 9 squares. Now, I'm there trying to tell them about the 9 empty squares. The sister here translates the 9 empty squares. I run out that we find 9 empty squares. She tells me what they say. I'm running around saying 9 empty squares mean this, and they say you are in the house of the 9 empty squares. And then we remember that the Boule history book says that they were set up on the tenets of Skull and Bones at Yale, which is in New Haven, Connecticut. Ain't that some shit? Now, you don't think that divinity is on our side when we start unlocking information and these doors have been closed for 90 years and someone say, we don't even know if it is a Boule. While my butt is on the line for fronting off all them men out there in New Haven who never had to deal with that, who now got to sit up and put up with the pressure of people running around instigating into their lives that they're up to something, cook with something called a round table. The book America's Secret Establishment, an introduction into the Order of Skull and Bones, which is comes out of California here. Not one copy of that book on Skull and Bones in the city where Skull and Bones is headquartered. Not one. The people there were brothers in there from the bookstores. They had never seen the book by Anthony Sutton, an introduction into the Order of Skull and Bones. America's Secret Establishment, an introduction into the Order of Skull and Bones at Yale. And interestingly enough, in there you learn about John Dewey. John Dewey is the father of education, the Dewey Decimal System. He was a Skull and Bones man. He transformed education to the likings of the rich, where the individual served the state. And the state developed the higher missions of the people. Yes, brother? Jamal. At Cornell. Right, right. You must be a college graduate. Yes, that's one. Right. Are you familiar with the Boule? No, yes. Did you say yes? You didn't say. Okay. Right, 1904. No, No. Hold on, stop now, stop now. Hold it now. Watch this now. Watch it now. Watch it now. Oh. Can I ask you a question? Okay. That's right. We know the order now. They was all finished by the 1920s. They had finished with them 8, right? By the last one was done late 1920, right? Right, let me ask you something. You ever heard of Charles Wesley? What do you know about Charles Wesley? And he wrote your history book, didn't he? Did he? And do you know he wrote the history book of Sigma Pi Phi? But I'm just asking you, did you know? Now, just listen to me carefully. I respect you. I'll answer your questions. Just help me answer these questions.
What I'm trying to say is because they didn't have any idea what to do, and they needed organization, they went to someone to get some assistance. It's like this brother here.
So they went to who? They went to Charles Wesley?
If this brother's trying to start a business, and I'm already in business, then I think it would be feasible for him to become trying to get some insight.
Okay, now let's see what neighborhood we went to admire a business in. Well, watch this now. Hold it now. We were walking in a neighborhood called Greek. We looked at the white man was in business. We asked him, could I be in the Greek business? And so we then set up business like the person we emulated. And that became the problem. We were worshiping false idols. And the process of perpetrating the concept of Greek became part of the betrayal of the ultimate knowledge that we know to be true from the beginning of our society in Kemet. And that the Boule, or the first of the black, and it's not, I have a spot where I can show that we're going to stick together, and I'm going to ask you if you would show me that secret alpha handshake. You show it to me? Would you show it to me? You wouldn't do that, would you? Not in, huh? You wouldn't. That's right, because there's something that separates me from you, and it's the oath that you took. And I suggest in this lecture, and this is the strength of Brother Coakley, because no one has really ever set a strategy for black liberation. And that's why we developed this theme called the trial of the oath takers. Well, hold it now, Baba. Now this, okay. Okay. I understand that point. You made that point earlier about being in business and asking someone to help you that's already in business. And this is the point. This is not adversarial. I'd highly recommend that you look at those tapes back there related to the Boule, because they could help you understand that when the white man didn't have a friend in the black community, he went to those who had taken oaths to bind and bond their loyalty to each other, and there grew military intelligence back in the early 1900s. Before there was a CIA or even an FBI, they went to the black Greek societies and asked them if they would, in their various locales, identify potential troublemakers. And, so hold it now, let me finish. Let me finish. And to identify potential troublemakers and to find people who would assist. That's in a tape back there called White Finance Negro Leadership versus Marcus Garvey. The information is good. And I think that I too would make myself available to share with you what I think the potential of the oath taker represents. It is possible, because a tenet or a oath or a ritual is upon you, that someone could approach you and demand of you a certain mission. And I suggest if we don't, okay now, I'm going to read you an oath, and you will see that you will be compelled to respond. Dick Gregory is an alpha. When he refused to promote insight into the Boule, it was not because he didn't think it was worthy. He said he was afraid of breaking his oath. And unless I was going to whip white people, I was going to have to understand the oath of the oath takers to make him know why he couldn't share the handshake with me, because he was afraid to. He's a Boule too, no problem. That's not a problem. That's not the point. There are good oath takers too. I was just in New Haven, Connecticut. There was a brother there from Alpha Phi Alpha. He was so impressed with the program that he decided I would speak at the regional convention of the Alphas in New Haven, in Connecticut. I went to Cornell University and spoke about the Boule. I was invited by Omega Psi Phi. I just left last May the University of West Virginia, which is Rockefeller country, hosted by Phi Beta Sigma. And this is what I suggest to you as a brother. These young men who have looked at what I have to offer understand that there's great weight in the research of it. And it behooves one who questions it to question it with better information and not with an opinion of it. And that as brothers, even though they know that what I would say would cause them some uncomfortableness, they felt the value of the program was so great, they would rather bear it anyway because it was righteous. And so I offer to you my brotherhood, not to conflict with you or to front you off or to put you in a bond or a bind in front of other people. So I just would say I would share my information with you on that level because it does have great weight. And we'll close it at this point. I remember here on many occasions that you all copied the list for yourselves of the Boule. I don't think you're tripping and misassociating what it is, or when the AKAs call their coming together a Boule, you're not confused that with Sigma Pi Phi, the black men that met right here in Los Angeles in 1970. And how we found out about them was the NAACP was meeting here too, and the LA Times did a front page story on them, July 18th, 1990. You should read it for it's very revealing, the most revealing story on the Boule ever thrusted in the public. And from that point, we began the process of penetration that resulted in what we have today. And it's good work. And I say that you remember the movie The Wizard of Oz? You remember that wizard, he was really a punk, and he controlled the land, but no one really knew who the wizard was. But all throughout the land, there was little munchkins with wings, and there was the OEO boys, there was the Wicked Witch of the West, and knowing or unknowing, they tended to protect the wizard. All we say is, just step aside. Let us walk up on the wizard's door. Let us proceed at our own risks, and let us get what we got coming. Just step on over and let us go on up to the wizard's door. And that's all we about, is to get to the core of negativity, and we have been able to, with the power of information, move rocks and break up negativity with knowledge without even having to fight about it. The weight of the information and the righteousness of standing up to it has had great things happen as a result of it. And part of what I'm saying is to get up and go up to New Haven and find another part of the puzzle become collaborative in lieu of there being other information. When we were in Pittsburgh, after I did the show and the lecture that night, place was packed, the brother got on the radio next day. He said, now I raised that question, just like you did. He said, is Coakley saying the Boule is bad? I mean, why are you all excited thinking that they're bad when he was here and he said, I'll give you this information, you make up your own mind. So I listened him to the point he began to say that the Boule was good in trying to say it wasn't bad. And so then I called in from my hotel room. And I suggested to him that I knew more about the Boule than I was saying in the public. But I chose, as a brother, wanted to offer to the people as fairly as I could what I found, so that they could affirm their own minds about the validity of the knowledge. I stand accused, as Isaac Hayes would say, which means if there's better information, we bring it forth. We say if there's better information, bring it forth. So now we're traveling, decodifying this knowledge. And it appears as if, like Cinderella and the shoe, we keep finding 5 feet that fit.
That's right.
Well, if the black doctor has you in his office, and he's a gynecologist, and he sells surgery, and he looks up and sees that what you might really need is some golden seal. If that brother decides that he's going to give you that surgery instead of that golden seal, yes, don't trust the doctors. Because what we raised about the oath taker was lawyer, doctor, policeman, military man, Greek. They were just a part of it. In this flyer here, as Brother Coakley laid out, he's got the Mason. He's got the D.C. police. He's got the Boule. He got Skull and Bones. He got the symbol of the Pentagon. He's got the symbol of the Guardsmen, which is another group that protects the Boule. So the question was, it's a fair question, and I think and right here in the corner is the cover of the history of Sigma Pi Phi, written by Charles H. Wesley. All right. Anyway, I appreciate you, and I have to be careful because I do not want to estrange our relationship by dominating anybody about knowledge. There is no unfair advantage to gain by finding an opportunity to put someone down, and I'm learning as the strength of the operation gets stronger, how we have to be even more careful with how we use it so that we don't knock people out with it, that we're actually setting up a thing that they could be in it or just don't mess with it. That's the option we have. If you be against it, then that's a whole nother set of options that present to us as we choose to get around any obstacle that presents itself. And so it's a fair way of going about it. You have to really be careful about the strength of the information. Here's Armstrong Williams and with Strom Thurmond. I want to get that in the record. That's Armstrong Williams bringing Strom Thurmond to the Urban League meeting as his mentor. And I just want to make you mad. And I suggested that Armstrong needed his toes broke, a finger chopped off, because what makes him misbehave so excessively is that there's no retribution. There's no retribution, and we need to do that. I got to move fast. Here's a picture. I spent much time with you in the past. Before I even got to Boule or any of that, I was talking about the Trilateral Commission and the Rockefellers and other stuff, good brother. And this is before I even found the oath takers and stuff. And in that process, I used to talk about that crisis of democracy position paper. The access to education had become restricted. The education was blamed for increasing the aspirations of the people. Therefore, the access to education must become restricted. It was Brother Coakley that said to you, as they had said to us, that if New York is able to offer reduced social services without civil disorder, it will prove it can be done in the most difficult environments in this nation. And knowing what I know about the anatomy of a takeover in the city, I had to sit up and watch what happened in D.C. because jealousy and envy in D.C. was so great that even though they knew I knew some of the things that could help them resolve the unfolding of the Financial Control Board and the usurping of Mayor Berry's power, they did not want to call on me. That's discussing that, can I get a hole in your fence? They didn't. Burgundy BMW is blocking somebody in. All right. Bring that $100 check in with your BMW. Okay. And so here comes D.C., and I've got to sit up and look at the process as it starts. City under siege. This is the local black paper in D.C. as it talks about the process. Congressional overseers back D.C. residents into a corner. Overseers. The plantation, the recolonization of an American city. The anatomy of the takeover of the cities are just like having taken over a recolonized country. And so I needed to do this quickly. As soon as now remember, this was the formula. Marion Barry was running for mayor. The budget deficit was $100 million. Marion Barry won the election. The accountants re-examined the same books. The deficit moves from 100 million to 250 million. Barry takes the deficit, flies to New York. It was Brother Coakley. Few of the leadership ever even mentioned these people. Standard & Poor's and Moody's, the investment rating companies, who control the cities by how they rate your bonds. Brother Coakley targets them for you. McGraw-Hill Corporation and others, who are the motherships to those organizations. And he says that they control cities. Barry goes there, gets a $250 million loan, one of them big old checks J.P. Morgan presented him with, the J.P. Morgan Bank. And he stood up and proudly came back to D.C. with the $250 million cardboard check and announced that he had resolved the financial crisis. Then here comes the GAO, the General Accounting Office, the oversight financial investigative arm of the U.S. government, and now they come over and reevaluate the same books the third time, and now the deficit is $722 million. And they turned to Berry and said, now take your ass out there and get that. Immediately, Standard & Poor's and Moody's took the bond rating of D.C. and kicked it down into the junk bond status, which meant that no one could give it money. J.P. Morgan would give it money because they know that the backup of D.C. government is the federal government, so you know you're going to get paid if you give it some money. So they went on and gave it the money, and they broke ranks with the other whites, and eventually the deficit escalated. Then now Berry needs cooperation. So Newt Gingrich announced, because D.C. can't run its money. Now, last time I looked, the U.S. government was in $147 trillion in debt. So the people who made that debt looked over at the D.C. debt and said, D.C. needs a slap in the pants. Now, I told you the formula. The formula is they speak with forked tongue. They do one thing and do the other thing all at the same time, and it neutralizes you, and you do nothing because you're confused. So now Berry is now sitting up trying to see what's going on in D.C. A series of things begin to happen. Eleanor Holmes Norton, like a horse deep in the pack of a race, jumps out. There you go, Barbara. And Norton backs board to oversee the district. Out of nowhere, the Congresswoman begins to set up herself as the overseer, the ultimate decider of the fate of D.C., and she announces that she cuts a deal all by herself with Newt Gingrich that says to get loan back up, D.C. will have to accept a financial control board. Now, when I told you about the takeover of the American cities, I said that it was the Rockefeller Trilateral Commission's 8th position paper, The Crisis of Democracy, that decided that these cities needed to be taken over, starting in 75 in New York, 77 in Cleveland. It came to Chicago in 79. Out here on the West Coast, you had Proposition 13, which sucked up all the loose surplus in your budget and refunded all the extra property taxes that the hunkies had paid, rebated it back to them, and made the Treasury go down to empty. So they had no financial backup. Now you're in the position for an Orange County. But first they had to see if you were doing good, they took it away. If you were doing bad, they just announced how bad you were. Now, watch this. Now, the Trilateral Commission ain't had many black members, 8 or 9 in all, one of which is Andrew Bremer, who is a black economist that wrote in the back of Black Enterprise. He's the first black man ever been put on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors in '64 by Lyndon Johnson, and he's a boule, as a matter of fact. So when they decide they're going to set up a control board, who is it do you think that they go to get? They go right out and get somebody that they know they can count on. And who do they end up with? Andrew Bremer. This is the man who chairs the 5-member Financial Control Board of the District of Columbia. Andrew Bremer, that's a picture of him. He's a boule, and a trilateral commissioner. He's Rockefeller's man. He can be counted on to protect the Rockefeller money. Now, so he gets that spot. Now they want to put the white man on there, so they get 3 blacks and 2 whites. They make the 3 blacks come out first. They make them walk down the street, and everybody puts the cameras on them. So black people are not edgy that it's a white man thing. It is a white man thing. But now, because we can take sight on seeing some dark faces, the project was working. So anyway, then they bring the 2 white men on, more powerful than all the blacks on the board together. Don't even live in the district. You know, overseer don't have to live on the plantation. He just got to be able to show up on time. 6 o'clock, you feed the slaves. You know how it go. Anyway, so now they go get a financial control man. They go get a chief executive officer, and they go get this guy named John Hill. All throughout this article, they keep running how he's the man in control. He's the man at the GAO that did the 3rd audit that said it was a $722 million debt. So whites made him the executive director of the Financial Control Board. And they keep calling him the man in control. Man in control. I kept looking at this. I said, something funny about this story. Now, I've watched themes and how the man in control. Sure enough, in the story, they say, when we asked John Hill about his sexual relationships, he said that he talked amiably of his first wife, but rumor has it that he's gay. And they then go on asking him 50 questions about his sexual activity, all of which he refuses to answer. And now we know why they call him the man in control. Meaning that here's a guy who ain't gonna never talk back because he's sexually vulnerable to other people. In D.C., the sexual thing, the sexual bond and bind is strong. It's a lot of sexual malfeasance in the District of Columbia, and it holds the secrets together. No, they use you on whatever vulnerability you got. Clinton's was sexual relationships with white women. What's old boy actor come out here had to have a black woman. Yeah, you know him. Soon as the Financial Control Board comes in, Financial Control Board demands 2,000 people fired. That's what a Financial Control Board do. This is the anatomy of a takeover, the recolonization of an American city. In the meantime, Clinton, he had to sign the control board into law because technically the D.C. is not a state, it has no governor, so the president is the overseer of the District of Columbia, so he signs the legislation. Marion Barry has this weak little smile on his face at all these events because we know he's not really happy. But when he first became mayor, I told you, I came here and showed you that article from his first press conference where he renounced Louis Farrakhan. He renounced Steve Coakley and Leonard Jeffries and Malik Zulu Shabazz and promised the white people that his town wouldn't be safe for these type of people. And then all of a sudden they said, damn, this nigga, he like Ito. He think he exempt from persecution. Okay? Now they decide. Newt Gingrich keeps sending the word around D.C. that tell those blacks in D.C. that Newt runs the town. I want you all to go get a throne, and I want you to go get some people, and I want my ass clowned in front of the nigger community. And he said, Marion Barry, I want you and Pocahontas to set it up for me. So they decide they're going to call a town hall meeting. And at this town hall meeting, Newt Gingrich is going to talk about his plan for D.C. And again, that's Newt Gingrich with Eleanor Holmes Norton coming to the stage. Here comes the school superintendent out. They boo him to death. Here comes Marion Barry out. They cheer, Marion, Marion. Here comes Eleanor Holmes Norton out. They cheer like crazy. Call her the woman who saved D.C. from financial collapse. And then here come Newt Gingrich, and the people start to have boo, and Eleanor Holmes Norton goes to the stage and demands that they respect this white man. Yeah, that had the golden hair, Pocahontas thing. And anyway, this is the New York Times front page strike. Washington Post front page, August 3rd, 95. House Speaker Newt Gingrich faced 1,000 most anxious and agitated district residents last night, reassuring them that he doesn't want to take over the city, but does intend to use his authority to encourage reforms he feels will make the schools and neighborhoods and economy the strongest in the nation. Appearing at an unprecedented town meeting called to quell residents' concerns about congressional involvement in the city affairs and spell out some of his ideas for urban reform, the sometimes combative speaker struck a conciliatory tone with a crowd that greeted him with no Newt banners on the outside. On the stage, Gingrich was praised repeatedly by Marion Barry and Eleanor Holmes Norton in a strong show of bipartisanship. Also on the stage, who sat quietly without saying a word during the whole evening, was Jesse Jackson. The black paper called it, Gingrich and city leaders hold historic town meeting. House Speaker Newt Gingrich held an unprecedented town meeting at Eastern High School. It is believed that Gingrich is the first speaker in the U.S. House of Representatives in the city's history to meet with the residents en masse. Okay, watch this as he gets up to the New York Times. Loose lips. This is the weekend paper like your L.A. Weekly. It's reflecting on the meeting. There's Marion Barry wiping his head, Newt Gingrich, as one of the city council members shooting a camera at the camera. D.C. delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton officiated the ceremony and drew the biggest applause. The cheers were almost as loud as the boos that followed every mention of D.C. Public School Superintendent Franklin Smith. Franklin Smith, the black school superintendent, was booed worse than Newt Gingrich. The heated debate in the community whether Norton sold out the city by pushing for the control board or whether she brilliantly protected D.C. from harsher measures such as a receivership did not surface during the meeting itself. It says here, behind this new holy trinity of Gingrich, Barry, and Newton sat a grimacing Jesse Jackson, the city's supposed point man on statehood. Jackson's role these days seems to be to show up at a place where others are singing, clapping, and bestowing praise and scowl. After stating at WRC-TV's Viewpoint 3 days earlier that he would not participate in the Gingrich show, he showed up contrary to his own public statement. You know, I never really been to a meeting, but I been to some, I spoke at some. Yeah, I ain't really going to the meeting, but I'll be there. Right. Says here, Mayor for life Marion Barry, the city's elected mayor, chose to forego the traditional wedding march. Instead, he greeted with the customary chants, Barry, Barry, shouted by the audience members. Barry looked grateful just to be standing next to Newt. It was only a few short months ago, after all, that the members of the Speaker's party threatened to strip the mayor of his powers and appoint a federal receiver. There ain't a damn bit of difference between a federal receiver and a financial control board. It's just really garbage that they're trying to insinuate there's differences. Barry seems more happy to let Gingrich and the financial control board make tough decisions while he concentrates on funneling more city contracts to his pals. Anyway, just some condemnation. Now, they have this open microphone situation there. Oh, here's what the New York Times says. Gingrich gets new audience in Capital City. This is New York Times, August 4th, 95. Speaker Newt Gingrich dropped into unfamiliar surroundings on Wednesday night as he listened for more than an hour to residents of Washington asking, begging him to help their city out of the swamp of problems. New York Times goes all over the world. There are the D.C. people begging this Jamestown colonialist to do something for their city. Said he was flanked by Marion Barry, Jesse Jackson, both of whom sat in total silence. That's why he had to hurry up and get out here. See, he thought it was going to be trouble that night. Since they thought it was going to be trouble that night, they need Jesse on hand. You had trouble the week ago at the Mumia piece, so he was up here this week to make sure there wasn't no trouble. And there they all are sitting up there on the stage together with Newt Gingrich standing at the podium. One brother comes up and says, Newt Gingrich, will you meet with the leadership of the Million Man March? And the article is in the Washington Post, dated August 4th, 1995. No Gingrich meeting with Farrakhan in D.C. Pledge was for locals only, Speaker says. Initially, when he's asked that question, he looks over at Eleanor Holmes Norton. And he says, she tells me what to do in the district. Should I go to that meeting? She says, yes. He turns to the brother Raheem Jenkins and says, I will meet with the leadership of this Million Man March. Then a note comes up to the podium. Note comes up, says, you don't mean, it says, let's see, let me go back. Organizers, they were not delighted when Eleanor Holmes Norton clarified yesterday that the pledge wasn't meant for fair. When Eleanor Holmes Norton clarified yesterday that the pledge wasn't meant for Farrakhan or other national organizers of the march, only for any local participant. Farrakhan's name was never mentioned when a local march organizer asked Gingrich about the prospect of a meeting, Norton said yesterday. This is a district town meeting, nothing to do with national issues or national concerns. They did not ask for a meeting with Farrakhan. If the district residents are marching, says that the man who asked for the meeting said that this is a backtracking device. I'm clear on what I said. What I need clarity on is why Eleanor Holmes Norton is defending Newt Gingrich. This is a classic case of folks determining who our leaders are. And it goes on to say that Gendricks turned to Norton, whom he described as his senior partner when it comes to D.C. matters, and asked, should I? Norton nodded yes. So my answer is yes, Gendricks told Jenkins. We will work it out. Jenkins then did a double take and yelled, thank you. Norton said the exchange prompted a congressional staff member to quickly slip her a note saying, I assumed that it was not a promise to meet with Louis Farrakhan, Norton said. She assured the staff member that it was not. Anyway, you can see what kind of bunk is going on that level. Now, anybody, and in the process of selling D.C. away, Eleanor Holmes Norton and Jesse Jackson go to the United Nations and demand that D.C. get statehood. After on the local level, they sold it out to the Financial Control Board. To save their face, they went to the UN to act like they were trying to save something that they just sold out. Anyway, and this is the Washington Times, and it is dated May 12, 1995, about how Eleanor Holmes Norton and Jesse Jackson went to New York. Check this out. What did Newsweek and Washington Post say? This is Newsweek. Newsweek said an interesting thing. It's one of Gendricks' staff members saying, the level of anger and paranoia we're dealing with are truly terrifying, said a Gendricks associate. You can't imagine how volatile this city is. In fact, the speaker's real breakthrough involves style rather than substance. Always the white man's thing. He has chosen consensus building over confrontation. He has, in effect, given Eleanor Holmes Norton and Marion Barry veto power over his D.C. initiatives. Quote, we had no choice, says a Gendricks associate. Quote, Barry could have led a populist insurrection against the white interlopers, and that would have made our task impossible. So they understood that if you were able to offer reduced social services without what? Civil disorder. So they look up and say, if you can get Barry to go along with this and not wake up them niggas and cause us any trouble, we can pull this off. The only factor that's making it work is that nobody causes any trouble. And so now, so Barry doesn't do it. So the next night after this, Gendricks is supposed to speak in Atlanta. And even though he's a boule, I don't know if my man is still here. Now, he left after his question. But I have said this, and I said it in the lecture in D.C. Even though John Lewis, Congressman of Atlanta, is a boule member, I stood up, as I tell you now, and thanked him for when Newt Gendricks went to speak in Atlanta that next night, he and his friends took over the podium and refused to let him speak. And they had civil disorder. And I thank him for that, even though he's a boule. Because I'm interested in what he did. And wherever Newt Gendricks supposed to be out here, he was out here for a book signing or something. And probably nothing even happened. Nothing inside, right. The show went on. Yeah, okay. So we understand where that fits in the scheme of things in the black thing. I had this thing I wanted to share with you talking about the anatomy of the takeover. I know how they got Chicago. They killed Harold Washington. It was Brother Coakley did the tape. What really happened to Harold Washington? Stood alone on that level in Chicago because no one felt it any interest to stand up for the man. I'm sitting around reading an excerpt from this book on Wilson Goode, his autobiography. And you ought to read this. This will make you cry. I think about Ramona Africa being out here, right here in the good life, and then looking in here and reading what this punk boule man is talking about when he says that they had a command center going about what to do over the move. And the white boys tell him, don't come to the command center, because if you do, somebody, we don't know who it is going to shoot you in your face. And he says, I listened to the threat, and I thought it was in my interest not to go there. So I went home. And then he gets all the, I didn't know they had a helicopter. I didn't know they had C4 explosives. I didn't know they had rifles with silencers on them. I didn't know that the police chief said don't put the fire out. And he apologizes all throughout this for being weak. Same problem Dinkins had, same problem Bradley had. Huh? He didn't. All he ended up finding out was that the white boy didn't need no nigger mayor to tell him what to do. When it came to a white boy with a black person, the homie didn't need no consensus seeking. That's what he learned out of the whole process. And then he talks about, he recreates Ramona Africa's testimony, talking about how he cried when he heard what the woman said his police officers did, that he had no control over. And so I raised that question too, about whether or not your oath makes you vulnerable to us. And in fact, in here, it was an interesting thing. I coined a phrase I saw in here. He says, in any event, things had gone too far. We evacuated hundreds of people from the Osage Avenue that night, and they had insisted that the MOVE members be arrested before they came back. To back down now would be an admission that the police department wasn't willing to arrest those who had violated law. I was in a no-win situation. If I didn't act, I would be viewed as weak, an indecisive leader by citizens who were already saying, what am I paying my taxes for? In fact, it said, I was in a no-win position, a no-win situation, and I wrote next to that, remember, that the boule means a no-win situation. That's called a boule. He goes on to say how he was afraid of policemen who he had jurisdiction over. And just to show you how I go. And that's just the danger of things. So as I look back in the current issue of Emerge magazine and hear them talk about what happened to education, and sit up and know in 75 the white boys blamed education for increasing the aspirations of the people, and then ripped it 15, 20 years ago, to see them standing up trying to figure out what happened, and knowing it happened 20 years ago, shames me, because a little bit of knowledge, if people who didn't like me had promoted the things that I had found, they could have had more of the things they wished for. But instead, it was more important to hold me back. We be up on that. Also, a tape back there I highly recommend you get. It's called Counterinsurgency Then and Now. That tape I did in Long Beach back in June on the last night before I left here. Many of you, because all of you couldn't fit in there, it was a small house. We had about 40 people smashed in to a place held 25. But there's some key things on that tape. On that tape is the discussion about the human relation missions, the rumor control networks, in all these cities, including Los Angeles. It's a spinoff of a discussion that I had on KPFK strike KJLH with Milana Karinga. And out of that discussion, I raised a couple of names and then did a little research about those names. Now, the brothers in Long Beach will tell you the meticulous processing of that tape is this. I was in an area where many of the people there were pro-Karinga. So the discussion that I had was not about Karinga, it was about counterinsurgency. So I went around the country and showed different operations that did community spying. And I shared the formula for LA, the formula for Chicago, the formula for New York. You know who ran the Human Relations Commission doing the rumor control network in the 60s in New York? Appointed by Governor Nelson Rockefeller? Eleanor Holmes Norton. So when you start looking back, you start being able to find these people have got years of service in their belt in turning black people over. So after I went around the country with the formulas about this spying, I mentioned no names. Then after everybody, I got the audience to ratify the fact that the formula that I shared with them was straight. It was good, and it was an observation into potential negativity. Then I said, let's go back and put the names in. And it went, and so you would want to get that tape. It's an audio and video, Counterinsurgency Then and Now. And I have to say this. In New York, they had the Brooklyn Street Festival. A guy went up to Conrad Worrell, who's head of the Black United Front, who suffers from boule phobia too. He too swats at the boule and swears it doesn't exist, and a lot of other things. He's head of the Black United Front in Chicago. And he was asked by a brother in New York, what do you think of Steve Coakley? And he was standing next to Milana Karinga. And he goes, that Coakley, oh, he ain't no good, that damn boule stuff and all this, he ain't shit, blah, 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 blah. And then the guy turns to Karinga, and he says, well, you know, and he just says nothing. And that was a principled thing to do. And when we had that discussion on the radio, the discussion was about principled disagreement. I don't choose to speak against him about any of his personal relationship. The things that I talk about, the things that I speak against are in formula straight. The individuals we pick up as we move past these formulas. So that's an honorable note about principle discussion. And that when we go to condemn someone that we think is not right, let it be your facts that do your talking and not your emotions. For in lieu of your emotions, if fact overrides your emotion, you become suspicious of perpetrating ill will in the black community. And measurement is given to that when you're short on fact. So you will find great value in counterinsurgency then and now. Now, we had talked about in the past extraordinary individuals. That before you could take over countries, before you could take over cities, you had to rid yourself of key individuals. These extraordinary individuals would clearly need to be taken down, for they would influx the people with enthusiasm. Now, I told you in the past when I left here last, and we were talking about the Oklahoma bombing. Hey, let's give a little hand for the Unabomber. Let's give him a hand. Any white guy that causes confusion to other white guys deserves our hand. Remember, we said that we magnify anytime there's white-on-white violence, we magnify that. Remember, I told you when I was here last that this guy right here, this second McVeigh, is not the same as the first McVeigh. I told you that this guy ain't the same as that guy. This guy they wheeled out who started talking to everybody ain't the same guy as that first McVeigh who would only give name, rank, and serial number. This guy and this guy are not the same, is my allegation to you. I lay that before you, that those two men are not the same. In fact, Jamal, I'm going to open this up when you tell me you're ready and show you a better picture of the new McVeigh. Tell me when you're ready, okay? Now, since I was here last, I was told when I was in Chicago, here's this other McVeigh. Now, let me hook these McVeighs up. Yeah, right, he looks a lot like the white guy in higher learning. We talked about that. I go to Chicago, and I'm talking about the McVeigh thing. A brother in the audience, Robert X, says that the week before on CNN, they were talking to Governor Frank Keating of Oklahoma. And Frank Keating was talking about a book that his brother had written 2 years ago about a bombing of a federal building in Oklahoma. The only problem was the main character's name was McVeigh. I'll say that one more time. The governor of Oklahoma, anybody see it? Anybody see CNN that day? Sunday, a couple of people have seen it. We're going to have the tape out here to you. I'm going to send it to Jamal so you can see it, because seeing it is believing it, check? Yeah. I bear the weight of showing it, so you will say, Coakley told me some shit, I just bullshit all out there. I don't even believe that. So I bear the weight of showing. I'll take that responsibility. I'll show it to you. But he wrote a novel 2 years before the Oklahoma bombing. The governor's brother, Governor Keating of Oklahoma's brother, wrote a book about the bombing of a federal building in Oklahoma, and the bomber's name was McVeigh. Okay, now, I don't know, but I suggest that this is the second McVeigh. This is just, anyway, you got that into the record. Now, I told you, as a result of the Oklahoma bombing, that businessmen had gotten very scared, that there were many evacuations of public buildings in D.C. Terrorist attacks make businessmen think. Yes, quickly.
I'd like to add something to the record. Just 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before the bombing, all the records on the manufacture, the development, the shipping, and the numbers on the true statistics that the Gulf War syndrome had been shipped to that building in Oklahoma City. And the cover-up there is 200,000 U.S. citizens now have Gulf War syndrome. 7,000 people have died.
All right. After Oklahoma blast, bomb threats rise, forcing evacuations. How there have been over 70 evacuations of key buildings in Washington, D.C. on the mere threat of a phone call. Again, because fighting whites, they take the threat seriously because they know the white man's violent. This is Washington Post, Friday, April 28th, 1995. Now, listen up. But I said that when I was here last. That's not the point. The point, now somebody asked me earlier about the microchips. I had mentioned last here, it's in the Washington Post. Now remember, we're about the microchip. Remember, suspect fond of firepower, wary of government, told acquaintances U.S. had planted microchip in his behind. This is the Washington Times, April 24th, 1995. See, McVeigh say he got the microchip in his butt. You see that? You see it though, right? See, byline microchip in his behind, right? You see that? Right? Now I got to show you that thing about that book too, so you can see that, because that affirms it. Good white man said it. Oklahoma City conspiracy buzz grows. A white man, a senator in Oklahoma named Charles Key says that the government is in a conspiracy not to get all of the facts. And you know that guy, that attorney for McVeigh, came out and asked about the leg that's in Army fatigues that ain't got no body to it. There's some tales from the crypt. Yeah, we like that. All that confusion. And bombing case now moves in the courtroom. Again, I suggested, but now, remember I said that the rich white man in a fight with the poor white man would get the black man to come and save him. I left here back in June. Since I left here in June, remember I told you about all those movies that take them black men and make them rescue white people. We just saw, Brother Marcus and I saw Virtuosity the other night. There's Denzel. He can't save his own family, but he saved a white woman, saved a white girl, saved a white race. Always needing a black man to come out and save America. Since I left here last, the movie Die Hard, the movie Crimson Tide, what else? What else? Outbreak, Brother Who Flew the Helicopter, and Morgan Freeman. The Enemy Within with Forrest Whitaker. Under Siege 2, they got the brother in there doing it. Oh, man. And remember we said that even the old stupid movie, what other movie? Bring the Brother Man, right. But now they're given precise subliminal suggestions that the white man is the ultimate rescuer to white self-destruction. And that the black man, the nonpartisan stakeholder, could referee all of the whites into their opposing corners and split up America the white way. And so now, since I saw you last, both major magazines, who's gonna save America? Ghostbuster. Who you gonna call? Ghostbuster. Will he run? The man to watch. The man who's prepared to save America from itself. The day the snake goes to eat its tail. All right, so keep your eye on that.
Elaborate on what Mark has said about the Griffin.
Yeah, I think you may hear me on the front page tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But you have to listen in. Carl wants to do a show on OJ, but we're gonna go up in there and we're gonna have some OJ, but we're gonna have some Coakley too. Right. We're gonna have some Coakley, right? I want to tell you something. You don't know how many people called me, especially black women, who called my hotel thanking me for standing up for the sisters versus this brother Winston or somebody. Wait a minute. Yes. Evidently, sisters believe that Carl is not decisive enough to police the statements that he makes that inflame our community and cause certain levels of disunity. Again, if he has some researched argument about the psychopathic nature of any element of our community, people under 4 feet 2, Negroes over 7 feet, if he's got black folks with 6 fingers, if he's got some pathological analysis of some segment of black community that cannot liberate us, then let him bring it forth. But no mere man shit is enough. Gold van blocking somebody in. But the point of, and Jesus did not tell him to do that either. And so, as I went to go to sleep, the phone rang. And I put it down, and it rang again. And I put it down, and it rang again. Women, sisters, just calling to say, thank you for speaking to that brother. Yes, and it's funny. I did not know who he was. Just to show you a funny thing, we're in the studio. I turned to Jamal and say something like, no, this guy reminds me of this guy I got mad at when I was on the phone from Washington who kept trying to plague me about who was the damn police chief. I'm up here getting shot at, and this nigga trying to tell me who the police chief gonna be, and I said I wasn't concerned about which black man or which white man served a hunky. Get off the line. And I was saying, this guy make me feel funny, and Jamal said, that's the same guy. So listen carefully tomorrow. I think we got another message for the brother man. And this is it. Listen to this. Listen to this. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. We must have some principle here. Sometimes I have problems with Brother Keaty, and sometimes I think Brother Keaty do some outstanding work. But when Brother Keaty does outstanding work, whatever I disagree with him about, I do not use that disagreement over what I have to violate or to repudiate his work. And if Carl Nelson has a quick hand on Keaty's commentary, then I expect an equally quick hand on that other guy's, Wayman's nonsense. Check? And I can say that in spite of whatever I feel about Keaty. But in principle, if he's saying something that he spent time to study, that is better than nothing at all. Some of that nonsense that I hear that talks until it gets tired. And he even told me he didn't want me on this Friday, which is why I'm going tomorrow. Right. And I'm going to call in on Friday. Because I ain't seen his ass out here fighting for the Jesus he speak up for on the radio. If he's into God, come out here and help me with this devil on my ass. Right? Check. Oh, sister, here's the article from the Wall Street Journal dated June 15, 95 that you were talking to me about the Olympics and the fact that each Olympic athlete will have to wear a microchip around his neck. Also, a sister just called me from Atlanta and said that they're putting cameras up on every street and they're putting up detectors to be able to trace the whereabouts of everyone that's wearing the microchip. Now you know that they just decided they were going to sell that global positioning system, those satellites that can tell where a person is within so many feet. They're about to apply that to various government airplanes, airports, cars. You can rent it yourself. You can plow a field with global positioning satellites as they begin to work us into the ultimate system. Yes, brother, quickly. Right, so we'll be up on that. Now. Okay, let me go faster. I got to go faster. The mergers. Let me say this for you quickly. Go back to this article. I had recommended that you all have this article. I'm going to show it to you, and I want to see if I have the front page that I can show you. This is the cover. Oh, there we go. I enter into the record this article that I mentioned to you before called The New Establishment. That was in the October 1994 issue of Vanity Fair. The New Establishment is about the techno boys, the boys in this picture. You see, this is the picture of the new rich boys, the Young Turks. The Eisner, Michael Eisner of Disney's on there. Ted Turner is there. Microsoft man is there. That's right, I got that issue right here. Right, I got it right here. I'm going to show it to you. Yes, Jamal is right. They took the same picture that I'm mentioning to you now and put it in the Times. But most importantly the article is about the fact that these men meet, and that they meet secretly up in Idaho or Wyoming or somewhere at the old Averill Harriman retreat, and that they've organized themselves, and that they're the new establishment. In October, it's October of 94, and the age of information is upon us. The Cold War for the past half century, the driving force of the American economy is over, as is the influence of the Cold Warriors, the genteel East Coast establishment that quietly guided the country through the years. That's the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger types, the Foreign Policy, World Affairs Council, UN Association. In their place has risen a buccaneering breed of entrepreneurs and visionaries, men and women from the entertainment, communications, and computer industries, whose ambitions and influence have made America one true superpower of the information age. They are the new establishment. In this special report, And it goes on to say how Happerstam charts the fall of the Eastern establishment. And that was then. And they talk about the Eastern boys. And this is now talking about the, see, here we go. Power, influence, vision. Oh, here we go. Power, influence, vision is at the bottom of that page. And then it goes, yesteryear the country was run by Morgans and Rockefellers. And then by the white shoe members of the Eastern aristocracy. Then it goes on to say, this is now. And the this is now story is then going into those people at that meeting. Now I want to read you some of those names that are there, because you will see that all of the mergers that you're witnessing have come from people who are on that list together. And it appears as if this one little silly article, okay, remind me, yeah, I got it there. Yeah, here's the eyes and the piece, okay. What this current issue of the Disney World talks about is that and why they put this boy on all the pages of the magazines, all of a sudden John Kennedy's son is all over the place, just out of nowhere. There's a story here, the men behind the mega deals. And it says that this white boy, Herbert Allen, had got these people together. Well, in that picture of those people at that event, it was the guy, Herbert Allen, who brought them together. And he brought them together at that retreat. And at the retreat, they began to decide that they would merge their alliances into one unit. And let me go back and, for the record, show that picture again before I read the names. And I don't know if I got the picture backwards or forwards here. Okay. I'm missing the face of one of them. Okay, Ray, we'll catch his ass later. Okay. It said Herbert Allen, bottom right, President CEO of Allen & Company. It says participants in the Allen & Company's 12th annual Sun Valley Conference of Corporate Leaders photographed 8:30 a.m. July 15, 94 in Allen's backyard, back row, Warren Buffett, chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett is a dominant stockholder in ABC capital cities. So Disney, Eisner will come up on Eisner's name next. Michael Eisner of Disney. Now remember, Michael Eisner of Disney has a heart attack, has a triple bypass, damn near dies. A week before he almost dies, his main man, his second in command, dies in a helicopter crash. They were aligned with the head of Time Warner, but the head of Time Warner dies, Stephen Ross, of cancer or a heart attack. So it looked like them boys was under a little counterinsurgency, a little white-on-white activity. So all of a sudden, the Disney boy says, if I live, I'm going to buy everything ain't standing. So Disney boy goes and Spielberg and Katzenbach and Ortiz break away from him and run over to ABC. And he pulls them right back by buying the whole shebango and brings them right back to the point that Ortiz yesterday was picked to be his heir apparent. In a major compelling welding of white intelligence for a fight to the year 2000. Also in here is Warren Buffett. Remember, he's the one rescued Salomon Brothers, second richest man in America behind Microsoft man. Gerald Levine, president of Time Warner. Time Warner, I have an article up here. Time Warner, the number 2 cable system operator, owns 18% of Turner Broadcasting. Okay? James Kennedy, CEO of Cox Enterprises. Cox Enterprise bought the cable side of the Chandler family's LA thing, right? The Cox family. Cox family also bought a radio station. What? Show you right. And then they went in there and kicked the Cedar out. Okay? Gone. Her and Mark Whitlock. Gone. Well, Mark, you should have been gone. Barry Diller, CEO of QVC. Michael Eisner, chairman of Walt Disney. Rupert Murdoch with the Fox network. Remember, Murdoch is owned by who? Rothschild. And Murdoch owns who? Newt Gingrich. Thank you. Rothschild owned Murdoch, and Murdoch owned Gingrich. And Gingrich is king of D.C., who only needs to make sure that niggas don't disrupt anything so that he can sit in peace. See, if there's disruption like Bush got fired because he couldn't control Los Angeles. Said, Bush, you can't control them niggas, guy, we'll bring this Clinton in. Said, well, you know he ain't no good. Said, well, we'll use him till we get rid of him. And they brought him in when Bush couldn't handle things. And Gendrix got to show he can handle things. So he ain't no strong moxie man, so he go with the finesse move. Also, we got Bill Gates of Microsoft, Summer Redstone of Viacom. I told you about how the Knicks was supposed to have won that championship versus the Bulls, and why Michael Jordan's daddy was killed because he didn't roll over and throw that game like he was supposed to. And how they knocked out them MJs, Michael Jackson, Magic Johnson, and Michael Jordan out. And they all trying to get back, all three of them trying to do something. But after the Knicks didn't win, Viacom goes in and buys what company? Who? Paramount. Check. And then Paramount already owns Madison Square Garden and the Knicks. So Summer Redstone also owns what corporation? You usually get your videos from there. Block. Well, all right. David Griffin of the David Griffin Company. You know the record movie man. H. Wayne Huizinga, chairman of Blockbuster Entertainment. Edgar Brofman, chairman of Seagram's. He bought what media company? MCA from Louis Wasserman and the boys. Edgar Brofman is head of the World Zionist Organization. Edgar Brofman just gave over $40 million to the Hillel houses on college campuses to help Jewish community fight blacks. Michael Orvich, chairman of Creator Artists Agency. John Malone, president of Telecommunications. And then you look over here and find out that TCI owns 14% of Turner Broadcasting. Seagram's owns 14.9% of Turner Broadcasting. So Turner just holding open his corporation while the others use him. And yesterday, Microsoft said they want to buy a piece of Turner. Anyway, so it goes, my point is that one group of white boys fight another white boys. Remember we talked about that word Hollywood? And that the word Halle, or the German word H-O-L-L-E, was the same as the German word H-O-E-H-L-E. Halle and Halle were the same, is not without significance, is what J.R. Surlott said in the book, The Dictionary of Symbols. And of course, Hollywood sits across Griffin Park. And there are all these little mices with the Pied Piper, as The Economist, which is the big British magazine, talks about how, you know who they say who the Pied Piper is in there? It says Walt Disney and the Piper's Tune. Walt Disney in this story is not the Piper. You know who's the Piper in this story? Rupert Murdoch. Because in this story, the magazine says, and I got the article, it's loose because I tore it out just to show it at the last stop. I can tell you what it says. It says that it's not Eisner of Disney that decided that he would go and buy up into the other medias. This great consolidation of media is being forced by Rupert Murdoch. And it says in the story, Rupert Murdoch knows no boundaries. Says he's bought countries against every law in every country where he has a corporation, and eventually he overcame the law, and they accepted the things that he bought, which is what Gendrix did for him in Congress with a law that allowed him to own print and press and TV and radio all in one town. And why does The Economist play up the role of Murdoch as the lead man? Because the chairman of The Economist is, anybody know? Evelyn de Rothschild. The Rothschilds own The Economist. The chairman is the same Evelyn de Rothschild who's on the board of De Beers Diamond Mines. So when they say that Murdoch is the man in America, it's because Newt is owned by, and Murdoch is owned by, all right, check. On Friday, we're going to talk about this article that's in the Library of Congress magazine called Civilization on Afrocentrism. The current issue of Emerge magazine has a story in it about Afrocentrism. And I'm going to give a little talk as we talk about Africa and some more things. Is Afrocentrism a tool of black liberation? If someone is willing to copy it, then I will make a clean copy of it available. This is the July-August issue of Civilization. Understanding Afrocentrism, Why Blacks Dream of a World Without Whites. Look up. Look up. I found a right-wing magazine. That was talking about Clinton. I told you them white boys wanted to kill Clinton. Look at this. Look at this picture of Clinton the white boys put out. This is in a white Republican magazine called AWOL. Got Clinton jumping over the fence with the Masonic Washington needle in the background. That needle point. No building in Washington, D.C. is allowed to be bigger than that. On Friday, I'm going to give you all a little bit about Washington, D.C. I'm going to give you a little bit about things about Washington you should know, things about Washington that will help you understand the strategic nature of Washington. And if you seek to come there for the Million Man March, I will help you know how to position yourselves. Yes, quickly. Yes, James Early, and he's anti-Afrocentrism. James Early. Gerald, correct. Yes. Financial Times, Union Pacific agrees $5.4 billion Southern merger. Deal to set to create the largest railroad company in the U.S. Just keep that in your mind that the railroads are emerging. Telecommunications legislation sparks a storm on the Hill. I got another story up here about how y'all got to hold the noise down. Another story up here about how the telecommunications bill was created and run by the corporations from the very beginning. Microsoft may buy into CBS Hungry Turner. Just want to enter that in the record. That's your Saturday's August 12th, 95 LA Times. Okay? First family vacation plans. Clinton is on vacation. Says he's at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Says that's the state of Senator John J. Rockefeller. In a fir Senate glade next to the 13th Fairway Jackson Hole, Rockefeller's grandfather, John D. Rockefeller, brought much land in the area in the 1930s and donated 52 square miles to the federal government to help establish Grand Teton National Park. Grand Teton. When you start talking about Tetons, you're talking about ethnicity. Grand Teton. This is the story that I was telling you about Walt Disney and the Piper Spoon that says that Murdoch is the man. Apparently enough, Mr. Murdoch's latest follower is a mighty mouse, Walt Disney, which is to pay $19 billion for capital cities. And it goes on to say, in Hollywood, entertainment firms have fallen over themselves to follow him. That Time and Warner merged after Murdoch merged. It says Murdoch has danced between newspapers, film, television with impunity. He has ignored boundaries of all sorts, geographical, technical, regulatory, and he has grown bigger and bigger. That's the Rothschild talking about what his man is doing, how my man is doing over there in America. Disney takeover ties entertainment closer to sports. Disney buys ABC, ABC owns ESPN. But isn't this sports kind of entertaining anyway? Who's to say the fight ain't fixed or the basketball game ain't thrown? Right. Who's to say the boxer don't fall when he need to? Or the 31 guys fell before this white boy's feet so he could beat a white boy when they needed one? Here's the story, September 6, 94, when LA Times did the story about them white men meeting at that Jackson Hole in Wyoming, about how they were merging up. They did this, the same picture, they ran it before the story ran again on the new establishment. Okay? House GOP plan seeks $1.4 trillion in savings. It's talking about the debt. The U.S. debt is $4 zillion. Oh, let's see. No, I'm sorry. $4 trillion. $770 billion, $52,495,898. That's a sign that the congressman who heads the budget committee put up about the debt. And he says over here, he said, we will force the American people to do without everything to bury the U.S. debt. And he said, there will come the death of freedom. So remember now, when they get through playing this, when they keep playing this game, found another right-wing magazine called Reasons. That's the one that did the picture of Clinton jumping the wall. Interestingly enough, they showed a Capitol building, but they showed a Capitol building with the Masonic square on it. When you look at architecture, you see that Masonic archway in there, that triangle in there. And it goes into a story talking about how the right wing was being set up by the Jewish media and others. Talks about the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Council and Klan Watch, who set up the right-wing militias with the stigmatization of McVeigh and the other guy. And they're saying how dangerous it was for them, and they were being set up. Then it says, first the feds put Reverend in jail for tax evasion, says the militia member. I thought that was a great idea. Then they went after the guy from India who had all them limousines up in Oregon, which was okay with me too. Then I started getting worried when I learned about what happened to Randy Weaver. When the FBI killed all those people in Waco, I asked myself, who are they going to come up next? The Baptists? Huh? White on white confusion. Let's give it some hands. Now that Disney accomplished the goal of merging with ABC, then they sent out that they want to buy the headquarters of NBC. Rockefeller owns NBC through his General Electric RCA connection. Now, Disney announces, Wall Street Journal, Thursday, August 3rd, Rockefeller Center attracts the interest of Disney. Today, Disney threw down on the mortgage on Rockefeller Center. So now Disney has reached out to grab Rockefeller. Now the vulture capitalists, Milliken and Borsky, grabbed them Rockefeller companies that were undervalued. And when Rockefeller got the time, he went on and smashed their asses. Now Disney boy is real arrogant and pushy, and he's now reached out for the Rockefeller. So now get ready for some action, because you're about to see some heads roll. White on white heads gonna roll. And we be in tune and be ready for all of that. Just in line with the crisis of democracy, which said that it threatened the middle class, there's a story in Monday's LA Times, August 14th. It says, forgotten middle class is keeper of the key to the White House. It says that it is desertion to the Democrats by white voters without college degrees. Said one half of all the people that vote are white people without college degrees. And how they changed their votes. It says Americans without college degrees have a good reason to be disaffected. Over the past 20 years, they have suffered the most from the structural changes transforming the U.S. economy. That's what the crisis of democracy did. It announced the transformation of the U.S. economy from an industrial-based economy to a service-based economy. And it says that the poor white man then suffered the greatest from the world transformation. Just tie that in there. We'll get to that even a little later. Notice all that Hiroshima shit they threw back out there recently. How they went Hiroshima, 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 Hiroshima. And I thought that was awfully unusual. Okay. Right. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Two things I need to do. I got one last piece I want to share with you, and it's about this story in The Final Call by William Kunstler. This is a very important thing. It's a very dangerous thing when I explain it to you, so I have to do it, and do it in a way that you give me your utmost respect and silence while I try to clarify something for you that I cannot allow to go on. In the midst of the amalgamation of the 1,000,000 men, different men behind the scenes have buried their differences with each other on behalf of group unity. Brother Coakley has said that there can be no unity around immorality. That's my theme. I've shared that with you consistently. Interesting, in one of those Herald something papers from out here, brother raised a question about the 1,000,000-man march. He said it was fine, but he asked a question about Ben Chavis. And he wanted to go back to ask some clarity about whether or not he did pay that woman off for some sexual relationship he had with her while his wife was pregnant. Now, some of you who sat in here and were mesmerized by him walking in the good life, some of you sisters, did you ask him, did he respect his own sister? And if he did not, is the 1,000,000 a place to promote his character? Now, this is where the community got to get tough. We've coalesced before and failed because we didn't have a theme of values around our coalition. The Rockefeller boys in Christ's Democracy said the only thing we're afraid of are people with a value system. So let's not all get together and say we need to excuse our values for a minute while we come together to pledge to keep other values. If we're going to atone to our women for what we've done, then let those who've respected their woman come to the forefront to lead the fold. And I raised that question, And I put the weight on you, especially those of you who sat in here and said, oh, Ben is in the good life. And then swear you're going to stand up for another woman. And he's got to come down with a good enough reason. Why would you pay a woman who is lying? Now, if you're a Christian minister, you're not going to pay the devil because the devil going to cause you monetary losses. That's not a valid excuse for me. So I hold out on that. Same way, I'm not going to allow nobody to take the time while we're amalgamating on a Million Man March to slip out some dialogue about Malcolm assassination. You can't bring that up while we're doing this, trying to slide it by, socially accept certain tenets of a discussion that are false. I raised the question about the following story. Now we got to do two things too. I gotta pass the hat for Brother Copeland, and I gotta pass the hat for the good life, and I gotta do that now while I'm reading to you out of this story. And you gotta give me your undivided attention. I need your support. If you want to write a $100 check, a $50 check, a $5,000 check, I need your support. Also, I mentioned earlier about the Grassroots 2000. I'm going to send that list around, or I'll put it up here at a certain place at the end. Those of you who want to sign up, or just write on a sheet of paper, Grassroots 2000. Just put your name and your phone number on it and bring it up to the front at the end. Whose box is this? This is Keaton's box. We put it in the top of the double. If you choose to be in it, and Keaton don't be taking my thing when I set it up there now. I put the names in there. Just write your name down if you're interested. We're going to be holding some meetings shortly. Now, the only way you can get to a meeting on Grassroots 2000 is to bring an article or a book on the future. That's the only way you can get in. No money involved in that. You will have to come. Now, I would like to hold meetings where I organize and not lecture. But because I have to suffer for this position, I can't make enough money just to have a meeting about using a paper to get in. I have to charge money because I can't eat, live, pay the rent, and have free meetings because we're not that generous. So you've got to allow me to transcend my relationship with you where I can organize and do things for you more if I can cover my butt and my family. My children should not suffer for the work that I do. They should not. And I should not throw in the towel. I should not throw in the towel and get a job because it's better knowing that I get the same amount every 2 weeks than worry about how much the people going to put in the bucket at the Good Life. I don't need that level. I will die from the pain of financial deprivation. And I done went out and picked on some of the richest, most powerful white men in the world with nothing, empty. Which meant that it must have been a true desire to get to them because it's not even rational on the bank level. We're a revolution without a bank that never took a step backwards. We have done things that people have been waiting to do. I mentioned Sunday, the NAACP, $4 million in debt. We ain't never had $4,000 to work with. Let alone the Ford Foundation at the NAACP convention writes it a check for $2,300,000 just to pay the severance pay on the people that got laid off when Ben Shavers got fired, to shut them up. That it's a do-nothing structure. I got a book in here on secret society somebody gave me, and in there is listed the NAACP. I'll get to that on Friday. I didn't get to it today. But I need something to pass the hat with. Anyway, and let me say, I want you to save something for the Good Life. Brother, would you do this for me? Somebody needs to pass this for me. If you want to write a check, please do. If you want to put it in my hand, please do. But I need your support. I need your backup. Don't forget, we'll be in here again Friday night. Now, I need you to be able, that'll go in there. I need you to do these things quietly because I want to read you something that's very important. Now, somebody's got to get up. Brother, would you get up and walk it for me? Because that's the only way it'll work. And, again, I need your support. And I hate to be... Did anybody want this Revolution 103 tape up here? It's a $20. It's a 4-tape set. I told you it took me 5.5 hours to complete that lesson because they needed help. They had not seen the likes of a Brother Copley up there before. So we had to help them. There's a tape that I took out of the tape player. Oh, here it is here. Now, listen up, listen up. Listen up. I want to read you this thing out, the story. The story is very important. Now, notice in Million Man March there's a series of pictures. I'm a supporter of the Million Man March. But I told you I could not accept Cornel West. I can't accept Jesse Jackson. Did he get you? He come across here? Okay. Hey, Baba, we ain't in the water now. Come on back. You can't leave 40 degree. Okay, but I want you to just go up in there and finish this. Oh, no, Baba, you out of order now. You got to go up in there and do your work now. Now, do I need to fire you? Right, I don't want to. Sister, you want to do it? Nah, I appreciate it. In fact, if somebody could even do this side, that would even help. It wouldn't take so long. Because I really want to hurry up and do this. I promised to be out by 10, and I was serious about that. Somebody got to do this side for me. Thank you, Brother Ed. I appreciate it. And yeah, we gotta hurry, sister. Don't say that. Anyway, and so you gotta hurry up and do that. And please, I need your support. Do what you can. Where Brother at? Oh, he over there already. If we miss anybody over here with the hat? Yeah, oh, brother. Oh, man. Look, how many missed with the hat? Raise your hand. Oh, come on, man. Look at all them people got their hands up. Now, we have an inquiry on you. That's either a right or wrong statement. Either they lying or somebody ain't telling the whole truth. All right. Now, listen up. In this story, I was showing you that picture of Cornel West with shaking the hands of Bev Smith and Minister Farrakhan. He shows up on BET with Minister Farrakhan and Ben Chavis. And I said that the only way Cornel West could be there is with the approval of the Jewish community, because they own him, and ain't nobody accused him of being overboard with Farrakhan, so you know it must be an inside job. We miss anybody else with the hat over here? Anybody, please. Nothing wrong with saying you missed it. Thank you all very much. Now, the next picture, I want to show you a series of pictures. Here's another story about the Black United Front Convention. There's a Brother Milana Karinga there on the second page of the final call. At the Black is Back, talking about Nationalists Mark Another Year of Struggle. Talking about the Black United Front Convention. Interesting, I have a brochure from that convention. I was in Chicago the week before that. That was the week before I got shot at. And in the brochure it says, standing up for the liberation and separation of black people. And then the next paragraph says, we seek to change the curriculum in the public school systems to better reflect the activities of blacks. So you want to be independent, but you to clean up, not destroy the enemy schools. It's incompatible. Anyway, this is the issue, the sacredness of the female, by Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in here, this picture, the story of Khalid Resume's post. And the story of Khalid resuming the post. Now, I need you one more time. Now I need you to, we need to pass the hat for the good life. And I need you to do it. Here, Ed. And I need you to do what you can do. For we need your support. The other story in here is NAACP renews commitment to civil rights. They getting a little play in the final call. He don't deserve it because the head of Meg Evers' wife, she pledged to be for the Million Man March. So they give her a little play, say NAACP is okay. NAACP ain't okay. And they can still be in the march, but they ain't okay. And we can't just, for being in the march, clean up all their bad paper. The account is deeper in the bank of the people's hearts. The white woman, I know who she was in there. Here's another picture. Gearing up for the Million Man March. It's Ben Chavis and some more people meeting in Chicago. Okay. Here are the two stories in question that I raised a specific question about. Anyway, this sidebar, I told you last time I was here, before Khalid rejoined the nation, that this picture in the final call of him in the summit in Africa is an indicator that they were about to rejoin each other. And that little box in there about let no one separate us was a little indicator that this reapproachment was about to come about, and the fact that it was written by James Muhammad, the editor. This is dated in the final call, May 24th of 95. And I told you that that was an indicator that something was about to happen, the reapproachment. And of course, it was eventually in that Serenity of the Women, I believe it's the July 19th issue, at which Colin is appropriately back in the nation. Now, in there is this story. It's a takeoff of this story. This story appeared in the News Dimensions in Washington, D.C., June 16th, 1995. The story is entitled Farrakhan Cleared in Malcolm X Assassination. This is the News Dimension, a local black paper in D.C. In fact, if you get the tape, Insights from the Black Side, that's an excellent tape. In there, the editor is there, and the editor says, I asked him, why does he put Armstrong Williams on the front page of all of his papers? Gives him an ad right on the front page. And he says, because he pays me. And I said, Baba, I could have sold out a long time ago if it was just about money. When will you do something because it's wrong to
Y'all
do
can't
it
hear me. I'm on
or
mute.
not do it? And he says, I'm learning.
Boy, y'all better watch out. I'm about to get it together, man. I got to get my little camera situation together. All of this type of stuff here. But we definitely working on it. My camera looks smoky than a mug, so we're going to fix that. But I'm going to get y'all back over to the lecture. What y'all say? What y'all say to that, man? Let me get y'all in the chat. Let me know how y'all feeling about that. You heard. Here we go. All right, let me get back to the video.
Give me the chance to grow and be a better man. You'll hear that in the tape. Then the next week he went right back and put Armstrong Williams on the cover. He had come to cover the story, the Coakley assassination story, which appeared in the same paper the next week. Coakley activist, black activist survives assassination attempt. The interesting thing to it is the reason he came to the lecture was because he had got a press release from Hebrew, who was here last time I was in L.A., who sent out a press release on his name to his house from his IBM computer at his IBM job, telling everyone to contact him about more information about me being shot at. He then goes on to give a description of the car, a false description of the car, and sent this to media all over the country. Next thing I know, Carl Nelson calls me. Brother, I heard about, I said, what are you about this? I just got a fax across the wire. All the media has gotten this fax from Hebrew. The light-skinned guy you hear me talk about in the tapes, who came here last time I came to L.A., even drove up in a car when I went up to San Francisco, showed up there in a rent-a-car. So you're right. Anyway, this is of what? This is of the News Dimension. The date is July 14th, 95. And you can hear about this as in deep detail in the Insights on the Black Side, audio and video. This News Dimension about Farrakhan Cleared is June 16th, 95. Now, I got to go fast, Sister, you get your bucket back there? Okay, anybody missed a Good Life bucket? All right. Now, quickly. Then the same story got reprinted in the Final Call. Let the truth be heard. Attorney William Kunstler speaks on the assassination of Malcolm X. Now, I got a couple of things about this. First thing, the hunky don't qualify to be in the black community exonerating or incriminating anyone about Malcolm. He ain't even qualified to raise the question. He's not the man. Malcolm been dead since 65. This is 95, 30 years done passed, and this Jewish attorney showed up in the Final Call rendering exonerations and shit like he Pope John. Anyway, it's the same story. Now, the reason I got a little agitated was that this was really not the time to be doing this. And when the story said Farrakhan cleared, I didn't understand the purpose of it since he had already said he didn't do it. If the guy says, I'm not such and such, and I tell you I didn't do it, I ain't going to tell you for 20 years I didn't do it, because once you stop asking me and that's the end of it, I ain't got no reason to bring it back up unless my conscience demands that I do that. Now, I was suspicious of that Quabilla Shabazz thing, the FBI's briefing. I brought that to you when I was here last. The Oklahoma bombing tape, 6/10/95 from right here. I raised those questions about how phony all that was. And it was. And at the end of that, Betty Shabazz got $50,000. And I bet you 9 out of 10, you'll never hear a peep out of her again about who killed Malcolm. You'll never hear it. And I say, even though I ain't with Mrs. Evers, I'm proud of the fact that she didn't rest until her husband killers were caught. Right? Anyway, in it are several questions. I just got to read them quickly. This is now the final call, interviewing Kunstler. Again, I tell you, this story first appeared in the News Dimensions back in D.C., then it got reprinted for the final call. Exclusive interview with Malcolm X attorney, William Kunstler, who was not Malcolm X attorney. He was hired by Elijah Muhammad, never by Malcolm X. But you see, it makes it sound more credible when you say Malcolm's attorney. It was Elijah Muhammad. He says Elijah Muhammad hired him to go get the other two guys out of jail who didn't do the killing back in that time. I want to speak to you about your research on the assassination of Malcolm X that you had talked about during your brief remarks at the Apollo Theater. Please elaborate a bit on them. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad retained me to open up the case of the two defendants who were not guilty, Thomas 15X Johnson and Norman 3X Butler. Talmadge Hayer, who was found guilty, told me the entire story of who was there and how many there were and how it was all arranged. It had nothing to do with Minister Farrakhan. It's the kind of thing that could have happened at any mosque. The hatred of Malcolm was so intense, you didn't need anyone to plan it. And false. Let's go back real quick. 7 days before Malcolm died, he tries to land in France. Dean Russ, Rhodes Scholar, Rockefeller Foundation Chairman, Secretary of State, stops the plane from landing in France. He's forced to fly to New York. He lands in New York. He accepts a speaking engagement in Detroit. The next night, his house is firebombed. He gives a speech in Detroit, the last message. He's dead 6 days later. You can't tell me that wasn't a plan, for the guys at the Autobahn wouldn't have had a shot if the State Department didn't send them to him. So don't stand up and say the hatred of Malcolm was so deep that it didn't need a plan, because that's a lie. And I don't appreciate anyone bringing this hunky with this lie. I can support what you do, but I'm not going to support this. And I'm not going to allow you to receive it unmolested. Anyway, it goes on to say, he said the hatred was so intense that you didn't need anyone to plan it. But Hayer said that he planned the whole thing. This is the man in jail, saying he done told Kunstler the whole story, and Kunstler believed him as knowing the whole story. Hayer didn't make the media say we caught two people and then say we caught one people. Hayer didn't make the policemen go away so that they weren't on the scene at the shooting, like the Collier thing. They went away right before the shooting on a Sunday in front of his son, like on a Sunday in front of Malcolm's family. It says, Hayer said that he planned the whole thing. He brought the guns. He made the smoke bomb. He organized the assassination. He went there the night before to case the place. It was a dance ballroom, and came back the next day early. 3 got in the front, 2 in the back. As soon as Malcolm came out and gave the salam alaikum welcome, the ones in the front went towards the rostrum, while someone in the back screamed, "Nigga, get your hand out of my pocket." And someone threw a smoke bomb. Just like the night at Khaled's at Marla Gibbs' place, where the gas bomb was out there, and they wanted to run everybody out of the room as the lights went out. The mic went out, the lights flickered, and the smoke came up, and they wanted people to flee out. But you didn't, Jay. And we remember who it was over there trying to get the people out. And then he goes on to say, I think it was Hayer who pumped Malcolm, who fell to the floor backwards, and then the other two, one had a shotgun, one had a Luger, blankety, blankety, blank. He says he's strange how the police miraculously took Hayer way to the hospital miles away from the incident, while they took Malcolm to the hospital across the street. He said, how did they know to do that? Then he goes on to say, he says he spoke with Benjamin Goodman. I spoke with him many times. He was a Fruit of Islam Masonic Manhattan Mosque. Number 7, the reason he gave the warm-up was that Malcolm always thought that if he would be killed, it would be by people of the FOI from Mosque number 7. Then he could recognize those guys because Benjamin would know them. And both Butler and Johnson were Fruit of Islam out of the mosque number 7. When I spoke to Benjamin, he never saw them. Butler and Johnson, after all, they were not there. He would have recognized them, and no one was being searched under Malcolm's orders. Did he ever tell you who gave the order not to have a search that day? And he goes on to say that he don't know, but the FBI, he's afraid the FBI may have tagged with instigating the murder, which they did, of course. And he goes on to say that. Then he goes on to say, and I'll close here. He says that they were gloating over the fact of this hatred they created and resulted in the death of a lot of people, but Malcolm was a big one to get rid of. Someone along the way, Hoover said, we have to prevent the rise of a black messiah, blah, 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 blah. I believe the whole thing, why I believe the whole thing with Quilla Shabazz was done in order to stimulate someone out there, the way these guys from Newark had been stimulated, some crazy person to go out there and get Louis Farrakhan. There's no doubt in my mind, not the slightest, that the FBI created the situation that led to the murder of Malcolm. The FBI created the situation that led to the murder of Malcolm. And they did it in many other places. Blah, 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 blah. I am utterly convinced that Louis Farrakhan did not have a damn thing to do with the murder. He says he was at the Newark Mosque that Sunday. I don't know whether he was or wasn't. But I don't think he had the slightest clue, because Hayer had been very open to me. When faced with the question that the minister said he was in Newark the day of the shooting, Hayer says, I don't know if he was or if he wasn't. All I know is he didn't do it. Anyway, we'll hold that part there. Khalid Muhammad resumes a post. Personally, all of you in LA need to be thanked personally for having stood up and brought those facts together that saved Khalid's life, because it was LA's a semblance of the facts. The front page, the Good Life, Jamal, Keedy, the students up there at Riverside, the other people that pieced the little information together that compelled them not to be able to use assassination as an option in the disagreement between brothers. And by the way, seeing how OJ's in his 8th month of trial, why is it best after a year and 4 months ain't been to trial one day? How come he ain't been to trial one day? Even the rain. So you have to dig up on that. When we come back on Friday, I'm going to go back to this thing about Khalid coming back in the nation. I have a few things that he told me that I want to relate to you about his return. I want to tell you a little bit about the meetings between him and the minister, as well as what had to go down between him and Dr. Aleem, because in the story of him coming back, it says that Khalid had accused Aleem of being involved in his assassination. And it mentions the Source magazine story that had Eazy-E on the cover. You hear me mention these things on the back of the tape, Counterinsurgency Then and Now. And in fact, in this story, Khalid says that he thinks Aleem was involved. Well, Khalid apologizes or strikes. He says that this was a miswritten story in the Final Call issue that tells he's back in the nation, and raised some interesting questions about it. But one of the things that happened in the meeting was that they wanted Khalid to apologize for certain things that he said, but some of the things that he said were leaked by other people. And so he asked Aleem if he would deal with the people who had leaked it to him, and that caused another interesting set of interesting discussions, and we'll talk intimately about that as we talk to ourselves on Friday. Brother John, you got any announcements before we finish?
Be back and be black on Friday.
Be back. Check this out here. In Montgomery County, this is right next to Washington, D.C., the Maryland side. They put out this story here about ozone alert. It was so hot. So they show a white boy running with his gas mask on. I was intrigued about that because this was August, and it's August, September, October. And I'm telling you, right now in D.C., they're closing off all those key streets around the Senate, around the House, around these spots where the march would have to go. They're closing them off under the guise of terrorist activity, none of which has ever happened from the black community. Always been a white man. They talk about the atomic bomb and all that Hiroshima stuff. 50 years later, 8 bombs, dust hasn't settled, and it talks about which cities all of the bombs came from, and it says it started right there in Chicago, at the University of Chicago, where the Rockefeller family had the mixer up underneath the football stadium that became the first phase of the bomb. And then it says when the bomb came, they put this story out. I was in New Orleans. It says the day that changed the world. One plane, one bomb, one city, and of course the goal was one world. All right, so we be excessively up on that. So when we come back in here, we'll talk a little bit more about the situation, about the reparation between colony and the nation, a little bit about coup d'etat in America, and then on to Africa and the State Department recolonization, as well as some other intimate details about strangers in our midst. We must develop a technique to deal with what might be infiltration within our own teams and ranks. And I must teach you some simple things about dealing with that. I thank all of you all. I appreciate you coming into The Good Life tonight. Let's thank Sister Ife and The Good Life for having hosted us. If you can pull your chairs up, please do. I'm going to leave the front of the stage to go to the back of the room to work with Simone to handle my tapes. Pardon? And don't forget up here to put your name up here for the list of those who want to be in the Grassroots 2000. And if you do not have a sheet of paper, you can come up here and sign on the folder.
So what's good, man? How y'all feeling that? We got a little something popping here. I got a little something to work with. I think I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna try a couple more of these little live stream joints and see how they work. You feel me? Because with this one, I still need to be able to add in more stuff. And oh shoot, I can. Oh damn, I can't. Oops. What? I should have doing that. Here we go, y'all. Shoot. Let's get it then. Okay. It says I'm sharing my screen, but I can't tell. Okay. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. And I control the screen. Messing with though. Can I control this screen right here, or do I gotta actually go to YouTube? Where the fuck that tab at? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we'll just share the whole screen, fam. We'll share the whole screen. And let's see here. All right. What I'm looking like, y'all. What I'm looking like. Okay. Okay. So I want to get on this email Udoka. Can we get on the email Udoka? Ooh, Udoka was off too. He was knocking the young.
Setting up for Squarespace online store.
Oh.
Categories and curate our
Everything. Ah, man. That ain't working. I gotta have to go get my other laptop. This laptop here. All right, let's see. Actually, we could go through some of these videos on the Young Telegram because, man, oh man. Everything went out slow. Dang it. Everything moving slow over here for me. Ah, man. All right, let's get back to it.
As they were commentating, they said, well, you know, the tensions in LA are too high to change judges. See, you've been known to have a short fuse on judicial injustice. So you might not know you have a greater impact on the law with the force in your behalf. The force with the facts make the truth. The truth is not enough. The force gets its confidence from the correctness of the truth so that you fight and can do any number of things to accomplish the goal. And what could I say about Darden? As I sat in the restaurant and watched people react to some of the things he said today, that boy's life is in jeopardy. There are people who are obsessed with hating him. No, I mean, seriously. I mean, that he draws something out in people that the truth don't do sometimes. No, you know, sometimes people need to see that. Armstrong Williams, he's another guy. He can make a Negro get up, fight black. He can do that. He got that kind of power. And Darden got that kind of power. He's a powerful man in that regard. In our behalf, in the reverse. So you keep in mind the power of your pressure. Because I believe that in every equation up there, you are a factor. Same way that it was no way. So I told y'all you do not mess with black people in June, July, and August. And it's been 105 from California to Upper Maine. Shit has been on edge. Deeper than the hunky ever. Now I'm telling y'all, all the airports is on high alert. The community neighborhoods is on high alert. You just ain't heard it. The hunky is on edge because in his wild woolly against, he forgot what season was. So now he is online. He has revealed that he wants to keep moving on the black thing, and he's shown a bit too much. He gonna announce he gonna murder a man on August 17th. He was delirious when he did that. He didn't think it through. He don't do that in August. He gonna make Marcus Garve's birthday. People who weren't even in on justice, like Jesse Jackson, could show up at a rally. It got so safe in this brother's behalf. I'm going to repeat that again. It got so safe in this brother's behalf that people who are not for justice, like in your weaker moments, is allowed to come up and stand up as if he's for every black man in the same predicament. See, if you're against that, you're against things like that. All right? Now, just a little more housekeeping. I heard one night Ben Shavers come up in here. Check. And he brought somebody in here with him. Check. And if I'm correct, and he's going to get to tell me, the person that came in here with him seemed to have a little boule phobia. In fact, they came in here and said, I don't even know if there is such a thing as a boule. And that's a funny thing to say. Because now we got to figure out who sent you in here with that bullshit. You don't even know nobody. You getting set up. So we're going to look at the tape. We're going to play the tape because I have to enter the tape into the record. Because I do not want people to come in here stabbing at people. If it's me, you after. And you got something to say irrational, like it's even a boule, then say it to me. I'm the one that took it to you. I'll be standing up to take mine. Ain't no need of running around behind my back or having to come down up here in the good life to find out what's incubating up in here. People all over the country are on alert about what's incubating up in here. And even though it's a small time you have on the radio, even though this is just a small time location, ideas that impregnate and incite behavior are on the highest level alert of the hunky because most of the people are not resisting. So resistance, even in a small level, it's the fuse that lights the bomb. So when you start getting depth and focus, the desire to come up in here and talk crazy. Other people have come up in here that didn't deserve to be up in here when I ain't around. And I wish those of you who knew there was a boule, I heard some of y'all say y'all was here that night, who didn't stand up and say, excuse me, that sounds like an incorrect statement. I have been taught and I'm well aware and have seen the documentation related not only to its existence, but to the point that I understand it has a negative impact upon our liberation struggle. What do you mean, is there such a thing? Who in here stood up and said that? And there remains the problem with truth. It is wherever you are standing. Now, you know that the shit fly all the way back to me on the East Coast. I catch it up in New Haven, Connecticut. Somebody come up in here talking crazy behind your back. And I say, I can't wait till I get out here to deal with it. But where are the people who know better? See, we're not accomplishing our goal if it does not impact your behavior. I don't care what you know.